Make yourself comfortable. Yeah, I know, the seat's warm and the place smells like a perfume counter exploded. Gave a ride to a lady who said her husband was following her. Turned out she was the one doing the following. Long story. The seat's still warm because she just got out. The perfume? That's gonna take a while. Just roll down the window. You came here because you heard about the name case. The one where a man got arrested for being someone he wasn't, except the someone he was pretending to be didn't exist anymore. Confusing, right? Pour yourself a drink. This one requires clarity, and whiskey's the closest thing I've got to truth serum. Let me tell you how it started. It was a Tuesday morning in September. The kind of morning where the fog sits heavy and the city forgets what sunlight looks like. A woman walked into my office without knocking. That should have told me everything, but I was still working on my first cup of coffee, and optimism dies slow before noon. Her name was Dorothy Brennan. She was 40, well-dressed, and carried worry like a winter coat she couldn't take off. She sat down and got straight to business. No pleasantries. No small talk. I respected that. Time's expensive, and nobody likes wasting it on hellos. Her brother, she said, had been arrested 3 days ago. Fraud. Identity theft. Using someone else's name to open bank accounts, rent apartments, live an entire life that wasn't his. The police had him dead to rights. Except there was a problem. A big one. The name her brother was using belonged to a real person. Thomas Whitmore. Age 35. Accountant. Last seen 6 months ago. Nobody knew where he went. His apartment was abandoned. His job was vacant. His life was sitting there empty like a house with the lights off. And Dorothy's brother, a man named Peter Brennan, had moved right in. Wore it like a suit that almost fit. Almost being the operative word. I asked her the obvious question. Why would her brother steal a stranger's identity? She looked at me with eyes that had cried themselves dry days ago. She didn't know. Peter wouldn't talk to her. Wouldn't talk to his lawyer. Just sat in his cell insisting he was Thomas Whitmore. Even when confronted with fingerprints proving otherwise. Even when shown his own birth certificate. He stuck to the story like a drowning man to driftwood. She wanted me to find out why. Find out what happened to the real Thomas Whitmore. Find out if her brother was crazy, criminal, or caught in something worse. She offered me $100. I told her my rate was $50 a day. She wrote a check for $200. Desperate people always overpay. I took the case, partly for the money. Partly because a man who steals another man's name usually has a reason. I wanted to know what it was. I started with Peter Brennan. The county jail was the same gray concrete monument to poor decisions it had always been. I sat across from him in a room that smelled like disinfectant and broken promises. He was thin, nervous, with the look of a man who'd been running from something so long he forgot what it was. When I introduced myself, he flinched. I'm Thomas Whitmore, he said, automatic, rehearsed, wrong. I told him I knew he wasn't. Showed him the fingerprint evidence, his birth certificate, a photograph of the real Thomas Whitmore from his driver's license. They looked nothing alike. Whitmore was stocky, dark-haired, confident. Brennan was rail-thin, blonde, scared. You couldn't mistake one for the other even in bad light with worse eyesight. But Brennan just stared at the photo and said, "That's an old picture. People change." I asked him how he knew Thomas Whitmore. His eyes shifted. First sign of honesty I'd seen. "I don't," he said. Then caught himself. I am Thomas Whitmore. The lie was getting tired. So was I. I asked him where the real Thomas Whitmore was. He looked at me like I'd asked him to explain quantum physics. "I don't know what you mean," he said. "I'm right here. Denial or delusion. Either way, I wasn't getting answers." I tried a different approach. Ask him about his life as Thomas Whitmore. Where did he work? He hesitated. Accounting firm, Mason and Black. That was true. Whitmore had worked there. What was his address? Another pause. Apartment on Larkin Street, number 12. Also true. He knew details. Intimate details. The kind you don't get from stealing a wallet. The kind you get from living someone's life. Or studying it very carefully. I asked him when he became Thomas Whitmore. He thought about it, really thought, like he was trying to remember something from a dream. 6 months ago, he said finally. March. I woke up and I was Thomas. I had his apartment, his job, his life, everything just fit. That was interesting. March was when the real Thomas Whitmore disappeared. Same month. Probably same week. Coincidence is just lazy writing, and this case was already too strange for lazy. Before I left, I asked him one more question. Did he ever wonder what happened to Peter Brennan? His own name, his own life. He looked at me with eyes that had seen something they couldn't explain and had stopped trying. Peter Brennan died, he said quietly, 6 months ago. I remember the funeral. It was raining. Nobody came. Just me. And then I left. Became someone else. Someone better. Someone who didn't die alone. The interview was over. Peter Brennan hadn't died. I checked. No death certificate. No obituary. No funeral. But something had died in him 6 months ago. Something that made him willing to crawl into another man's skin and pretend it fit. I needed to find Thomas Whitmore. The real one. Find out where he went. Why he left. And how Peter Brennan ended up wearing his life like a hand-me-down coat. Whitmore's apartment on Larkin Street was my first stop. Third-floor walk-up in a building that had given up on dignity sometime during the last administration. The landlady was a woman named Mrs. Kowalski. She had the suspicious eyes of someone who'd rented too many men with secrets. I told her I was looking into Thomas Whitmore's disappearance. She snorted. Which one? She asked. Good question. The original tenant disappeared in March, she said. Just stopped coming home, left everything. Rent kept getting paid though. Bank draft. So I didn't ask questions. Then in April, a different man showed up with keys. Said he was Thomas Whitmore. Looked nothing like him. I told him so. He showed me identification, driver's license, social security card. All said Thomas Whitmore. What was I supposed to do, argue with the government? I asked if the identification was fake. She shrugged, looked real to me. But I'm not an expert. I rent rooms, not opinions. He paid on time, didn't cause trouble. Then the police came and arrested him last week. Now I've got an empty apartment and 2 different Thomas Whitmores. One missing, one in jail, and nobody paying rent. That's my real problem. You want to solve that, detective? I asked to see the apartment. She led me upstairs with the enthusiasm of someone walking to their own execution. The apartment was small, clean, impersonal, like a hotel room pretending to be a home. I looked through the closet. Men's clothes. Size medium. Too small for the real Whitmore. Perfect fit for Peter Brennan. The dresser held the same story. New clothes, new life, all in the wrong size for the original owner. I searched for anything belonging to the real Thomas Whitmore. Found nothing. Either Brennan had thrown it all out, or Whitmore had taken everything when he left. I checked under the bed, behind the furniture, inside the medicine cabinet. Nothing. Then I noticed the floorboard near the window, loose. I pried it up. Underneath was a small metal box, locked. The kind of lock that says private in 3 languages and means it. I took the box with me. Mrs. Kowalski didn't notice or didn't care. Probably both. Back at my office, I picked the lock. Inside was a letter, handwritten, dated March 15th, 6 months ago, addressed to nobody, or maybe to whoever found it. The handwriting was shaky, scared. It read, "If you're reading this, I'm already gone. I had no choice. They found me. After all these years, they found me. I have to disappear again. Become someone else. Someone they can't track." The letter continued. "My real name isn't Thomas Whitmore. It's David Chun. I've been running for 12 years. Changed my name 3 times. Each time they get close, I run again. I don't know how they keep finding me, but they do. And when they find you, you either disappear or you die. I choose to disappear. I'm sorry to whoever's life I take next, but I want to live. That makes me selfish, maybe evil. I've stopped caring. David Chun." I ran the name through my contacts at the police department, found a file, 12 years old. David Chun was wanted for embezzlement. $200,000 from a shipping company called Pacific Maritime. He'd been the accountant, trusted, quiet. Then one day the money was gone and so was he. The company put a bounty on his head, $10,000. That kind of money makes people motivated. And thorough. So David Chun became Thomas Whitmore, lived quiet, worked honest, paid his debts to society in installments of paranoia and isolation. Then someone found him, someone who'd been looking for 12 years, someone who wanted either the money or revenge, maybe both. Chun ran, again, became someone else, again, left behind an apartment and a name and a life someone else could wear. Enter Peter Brennan. But how did Brennan get Whitmore's identification? His keys, his entire identity. You don't just stumble into someone else's life, someone gives it to you, or sells it to you. Or you take it from their cold, dead hands. I needed to know which. I needed to find David Chun or Thomas Whitmore, or whoever he was calling himself now, assuming he was still alive to be called anything. I went to Mason & Black, the accounting firm where Whitmore had worked. The office was downtown, respectable, boring, the kind of place where numbers went to live quiet lives. The receptionist said Mr. Whitmore no longer worked there. I asked when he left. She checked her records. March 18th. Gave 2 days' notice. Very sudden. Very unlike him. He'd been here for 8 years. Reliable. Punctual. Then just gone. I asked to speak to his supervisor. She directed me to a man named Charles Ashford. He was 50, gray, and had the expression of someone who'd spent too long making sure other people's numbers added up. When I mentioned Whitmore, he sighed. Good employee, he said. Never missed a day. Never made a mistake. Never talked to anyone. Then one morning he came in, handed me his resignation, and left. No explanation. I offered him more money. He said it wasn't about money. I asked if anyone had been asking about Whitmore before he left. Ashford thought about it. Actually, yes, a man came in, 2 days before Thomas resigned. Said he was an old friend. Wanted to surprise him. I told him Thomas was at lunch. The man thanked me and left. I never saw him again. Thomas resigned 2 days later. I assumed they'd reconnected. Guess I was wrong. People usually are when they assumed the best. I asked what the man looked like. Tall, Ashford said. Well-dressed, dark suit, professional. Had an accent, slight. Maybe European. Maybe just educated. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. He carried a briefcase. Looked like a lawyer or a banker. Someone who dealt in papers and consequences. I asked if he left a name. Said his name was Victor. Ashford recalled. Didn't give a last name. Just Victor. Said they went to college together. Victor. The name meant nothing to me yet, but it would. Names always do eventually. I thanked Ashford and left. Outside the fog had lifted. The city looked almost honest in the afternoon light. Almost. I needed to find out who Victor was, what he wanted with David Chun, and how Peter Brennan ended up in the middle of a 12-year-old embezzlement case wearing a dead man's name. Nothing about this was accidental. I went back to see Dorothy Brennan. Her apartment was in the Sunset. Small, neat, the kind of place where hope goes to wait quietly for better days. She answered the door with red eyes and a desperate expression. "Have you found anything?" she asked. I told her I had questions first. She let me in. Made tea I didn't drink. We sat in her living room surrounded by photographs of happier times. Peter as a child, smiling, before he learned to steal names. I asked her about her brother's life 6 months ago. What was he doing? Where was he working? She sighed. Nowhere. Peter lost his job in February, accounting position at a warehouse. They let him go. Budget cuts, they said. He was devastated. Couldn't find work. Couldn't pay rent. I was helping him financially, but it wasn't enough. He was drowning. Then in March, everything changed. Suddenly, he had money. A new job. A new apartment. I asked if she questioned where the money came from. She looked ashamed. I should have, but I was relieved. He seemed happy. Said he'd gotten a job at an accounting firm, Mason and Black. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my brother. I wanted to believe he'd turned things around. I didn't ask questions. That was my mistake. Families are built on mistakes we choose not to mention. It's practical that way. 32. I showed her the letter from David Chun. She read it slowly. Her face went pale. You're saying Thomas Whitmore was a criminal? And my brother just took his place? I told her it was more complicated than that. Someone set it up, orchestrated it. Peter Brennan was desperate. Thomas Whitmore was running, and someone named Victor connected them. The question was why, and what Victor got out of the arrangement. Nothing's free, especially not identities. Dorothy started crying, quiet, controlled, the kind of crying you do when you've run out of loud grief. Is my brother in danger? She asked. Good question, I didn't know. But two men had already disappeared into this case. David Chun and Thomas Whitmore. Same person, different names. Peter Brennan was the third. And third is usually when patterns turn deadly. I told her to be careful. She nodded. Didn't ask what I meant. She already knew. I needed to find Victor, a man with no last name and an accent, professional, connected to both an embezzler and an identity thief. The kind of man who deals in lives like they're commodities. I started with Pacific Maritime, the company Chun had embezzled from. They were still in business, shipping and freight. The office was near the waterfront, salt air and bad decisions. I asked to speak to whoever handled the Chun case 12 years ago. They sent me to a man named Robert Valdez. He was 60, weathered, with eyes that had seen every con, and stopped being surprised around 1935. When I mentioned David Chun, he laughed. Not happy, just bitter. That bastard cost us $200,000 and 12 years of looking. We hired investigators, bounty hunters, even tried the FBI. Nothing. He disappeared like smoke. Smart man, smarter than we gave him credit for. Should have paid him better when we had the chance. I asked Valdez if Pacific Maritime ever hired outside help. Private investigators, bounty hunters, the kind of men who don't ask questions about methods. He nodded. We hired a man named Victor Kessler, European, professional, expensive. He said he'd find Schoen in 6 months. Took him 12 years. But he found him, called us in March, said Schoen was living as Thomas Whitmore. We wanted our money. Kessler said he'd handle it. Then Chun disappeared again. Victor Kessler. The name landed in my brain like a bad penny. So the mystery man had a last name now. Kessler, European, professional, and apparently very patient. 12 years is a long time to chase one man for $200,000. Either Kessler was dedicated or there was more to the story. There's always more. I asked Valdez if Kessler ever delivered the money. He shook his head. Disappeared same time as Chun. We're out 200 grand and a detective. I asked what Kessler looked like. Valdez described him. Tall, gray hair, cold eyes, expensive suits. Carried a briefcase everywhere. Spoke with an accent. German, maybe. Or Austrian. Something Central European. The description matched what Ashford had given me. Same man, Victor Kessler, hunter of embezzlers. Also, apparently, a man who could make identities appear out of thin air, or disappear into them. I was starting to see a shape. Kessler found Chun. Instead of turning him in, he made a deal. Chun runs again, but this time Kessler doesn't follow. He waits. Then he finds Peter Brennan. A desperate man with nothing to lose. Offers him a fresh start, a new identity. All he has to do is become Thomas Whitmore. Wear his life like a borrowed suit. But why? What did Kessler gain? Maybe the real target wasn't Chun. Maybe it was someone else. Someone watching to see what happened next. I needed to find Victor Kessler. But men who chase other men for 12 years don't leave obvious trails. I called every contact I had. Police, private detectives, reporters, anyone who might have crossed paths with a European fixer named Kessler. One name came up twice, a woman, Lillian Cross. She'd worked with Kessler 5 years ago on a missing persons case. He'd hired her as a local guide. She might know where he operated from. Lillian Cross lived in Berkeley, across the bay. Far enough to be inconvenient, close enough to drive. I called ahead. She agreed to see me. Her office was above a bookstore that smelled like old paper and older ideas. She was 50, sharp, with eyes that had learned to read people the way sailors read weather. When I mentioned Kessler, her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes went cautious. "Victor's dangerous," she said. "What's your interest?" I told her about Peter Brennan, about David Chun, about the borrowed name. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she poured herself a drink, didn't offer me one. I respected that. Some conversations require anesthesia. "Victor runs a business," she said. "Identity brokerage. He finds people who need to disappear and people who need to become someone else. Puts them together, takes a cut. Everyone wins, except the people who get left behind." I asked her how it worked. She explained. Kessler would locate someone like David Chun, someone with a past they couldn't escape. Then he'd find someone like Peter Brennan, someone with a future they couldn't afford. He'd facilitate a transfer. Chun would pay to become someone new. Brennan would pay to become someone established. Kessler would take a percentage from both. The identity would be used, reused, resold, a commodity, like grain futures, but with fingerprints. So Peter Brennan had paid to become Thomas Whitmore. But Whitmore was already David Chun, and Chun had paid to become someone else. A chain of borrowed names stretching back who knows how far. I asked Lillian where Kessler operated from. "San Francisco," she said. "He has an office in the financial district. Not under his own name, under a shell company, Meridian Services. Same building as the Ashford. Different floor. Same elevator." That stopped me cold. The Ashford building. Same building where Robert Vance had disappeared in the elevator case. Different floor, same elevator. I was starting to develop a personal relationship with that building, not the kind you put on Christmas cards. I thanked Lillian and left. The drive back to the city gave me time to think. Kessler was running an identity exchange. Chun paid to become someone new. Brennan paid to become Whitmore. But where was Chun now? And who was paying for the next name? Meridian Services had an office on the 10th floor of the Ashford building, and I took the stairs. Elevators and I were taking a break. The 10th floor was quiet. Too quiet. Most of the offices were empty, for lease signs on half the doors. Meridian was at the end of the hall. Glass door, frosted lettering, no lights inside. I tried the handle, locked, peered through the glass. Empty desks, dust, the kind of abandonment that happens fast. I found the building manager. Different from the last case. This one was a woman named Mrs. Chun, no relation to David, as far as I knew. She told me Meridian Services had vacated 3 months ago. Paid through the end of their lease, then disappeared. No forwarding address, no explanation. Just a key dropped at the front desk and a check for the final month. Professional. Clean. The kind of exit that leaves nothing behind but questions. I asked if anyone had been asking about Meridian. She thought about it. A man came by last week. Tall, dark coat. Wanted to know if any mail had arrived for them. I said no. He left. Didn't leave a name. Tall, dark coat. That description was getting tired. Half the men in this city fit it. But something about the way she said it made me think of Holloway, or Kessler, or the same man wearing different names, like the identities they traded. I went back to my office and sat in the dark. The rain had started again, the city's favorite lullaby. I had a client who wanted answers, a brother in jail who thought he was someone else, a missing embezzler who'd changed names 3 times, and a fixer named Kessler who'd turned identity theft into a business. The pieces were on the board. I just couldn't see how they connected. That's when the phone rang. It was Dorothy Brennan. Her voice was shaking. "Someone broke into my apartment," she said. "They didn't take anything, just went through my things. My desk, my filing cabinet, my brother's old photographs. They were looking for something. I asked if she'd seen anyone. No. But I found this on my kitchen table." She described it. A business card. Meridian Services, with the phone number written on the back. The same number I'd seen in Robert Vance's file. 742. Numbers were following me. I told Dorothy to leave her apartment. Go to a hotel, somewhere public. Don't tell anyone where. She asked if she was in danger. I told her I didn't know. But someone wanted her attention. The card was a message, either a warning or an invitation. Same thing in this business. I hung up and dialed the number on the card. It rang 4 times. Then a voice answered. Accented, European, calm. Mr. Orton, I've been expecting your call. Victor Kessler. He didn't bother pretending otherwise. You've been asking questions about my business, he said. That's unwise. I'm not a man who appreciates scrutiny. I told him I appreciated answers. He laughed, soft, controlled. Meet me tonight, 11 o'clock. The clock tower at the ferry building. Come alone. Bring the letter from David Chun, the one you found under the floorboard. Don't be late. And don't bring company. The line went dead. I looked at the clock. 9:30. 90 minutes to decide if I was walking into a trap or a conversation. Probably both. Kessler wanted the letter. That meant something in it was valuable. Something he didn't want anyone else to see. I read the letter again. The part about they found me. Who were they? Kessler's people? Pacific Maritime's bounty hunters? Or someone else? The letter didn't say. Maybe that's what Kessler wanted to keep hidden. The name of the real hunter. I spent the next hour cleaning my revolver and thinking about bad decisions. The revolver was clean. The decisions were still bad. At 10:30 I left my office and drove to the ferry building. The rain had softened to a mist. The kind that soaks through your coat without asking permission. The clock tower stood against the night sky like a finger pointing at nothing in particular. Appropriate. I parked, checked my gun, and walked toward the meeting. The ferry building at night is a different creature. During the day, it's commuters and fish smells. At night, it's shadows and whispers, and the kind of quiet that makes you check your back every few steps. I reached the base of the clock tower. No sign of Kessler. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. The fog rolled in off the bay, turning the world gray and uncertain. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps. Steady, unhurried, coming from behind me. Mr. Orton, you're punctual. I appreciate that. The voice came from a man who'd materialized out of the fog like a bad dream with good tailoring. Victor Kessler was tall, gray-haired, and dressed in a coat that cost more than my car. His eyes were pale blue and completely empty. The kind of eyes that had seen too much and stored none of it in the sympathy department. He carried a briefcase. Of course he did. I asked him why he wanted the letter. He smiled. It was the kind of smile that doesn't mean anything except that the smiler has teeth. Because it's mine, he said. David Chun wrote that letter to me, not to the world. He was explaining why he was running again, why he couldn't pay what he owed. The letter was meant for my eyes only, not for detectives, not for police, not for curious women who hire men like you. He held out his hand, palm up, waiting. I didn't give him the letter. Where's David Chun now? I asked. Kessler's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. Temperature drop, the kind that warns of worse weather. Safe, he said. Somewhere he can't be found. I provided that service, for a fee. He paid. Now he's someone else. Someone boring. Someone who won't steal $200,000 and run. He learned his lesson. Expensive lesson, but effective. And Peter Brennan? Kessler tilted his head. Ah, the brother. The desperate man. He came to me. I didn't recruit him. He heard about my services through a friend of a friend. He wanted a new life, a fresh start. I provided one. The identity of Thomas Whitmore was available. David Chun had vacated it. So I sold it to Brennan. Clean transaction. No coercion. No threats. Just business. He knew what he was buying. He knew the risks. I asked him if Brennan knew that Thomas Whitmore was a wanted embezzler. Kessler's smile widened. That wasn't my secret to tell. I sell identities, not histories. What someone does with their new life is their own affair. Brennan chose to become an accountant, lived quietly, paid his bills. He did nothing wrong. Until the police traced the Whitmore identity back to the original embezzlement. Unfortunate timing. But not my problem. Someone broke into Dorothy Brennan's apartment, I said. Left your card. Was that your idea? Kessler shook his head. No, that was someone else. Someone who's been watching my business. Someone who wants what I have. The identities. The contacts. The leverage. I'm being pushed out, Mr. Orton, by a competitor. A man named Holloway. Perhaps you've met him. The name landed like a stone in still water. Holloway, from the elevator case. So Holloway was moving into Kessler's territory. Identity theft as a corporate takeover. The city's underworld was getting organized. I didn't know whether to be impressed or nauseous. What does Holloway want with the Brennan family? I asked. Kessler looked at the bay. The water was black, cold, and honest. He wants the letter because the letter contains a name. The name of the man who hired me to find David Chun in the first place. Not Pacific Maritime. Someone else. Who hired you? Kessler was quiet for a long moment. The fog swirled around us like a conspiracy. The man who wanted David Chun's silence. Not his money. His silence. Because David Chun didn't embezzle $200,000. He was framed. By someone who needed a scapegoat. Someone who's now in a position of power. Someone Holloway works for. If that name becomes public, a lot of people go to prison, including me. So I'm going to ask you again. Give me the letter. I didn't give him the letter not because I was brave, because I was curious. Curiosity is a detective's worst enemy and best friend. Who framed David Chun? I asked. Kessler's jaw tightened. The first crack in his composure. You don't want to know, he said. Knowing gets people killed. I've seen it happen. I've done it myself. Walk away, Orton. Give me the letter. Forget the name. Go back to cheating husbands and missing jewelry. That's where you belong. I told him I belonged wherever the truth was. He laughed, bitter, tired. Truth is a luxury. Most people can't afford it. Your client's brother is in jail. He's safe there. Holloway can't touch him. Dorothy Brennan is being watched. Just safe as long as she doesn't know anything. You're the problem. You're the one asking questions. You're the one who found the letter. Give it to me, and I'll make sure you're forgotten. Keep it, and you won't be. I reached into my coat. Kessler tensed. I pulled out the letter, held it between two fingers. His eyes followed it like a starving man watching a sandwich. I'll make you a deal, I said. Tell me the name, the real name. The man who framed Chun. Tell me, and I'll give you the letter. You can burn it. Destroy the evidence. Go back to your identity business. But I need to know who I'm dealing with. Kessler stared at me. The fog made everything soft. He was quiet so long I thought he'd refuse. Then he sighed. The sound of a man who'd been holding something heavy and finally decided to put it down. The name is James Corrigan, he said. Senator James Corrigan. He was a junior partner at Pacific Maritime before he went into politics. He embezzled the money, framed Chun, and used the profits to fund his first campaign. Chun knew that's why he ran. Not from the crime. From the man who committed it. Senator Corrigan, the same name from the elevator case. The man Holloway worked for. The man who'd been running for office for decades, winning elections, shaking hands, burying bodies. The city's favorite son with a basement full of skeletons. I'd heard the name before. Everyone had. But hearing it in this context, in this fog, from this man's mouth, felt like touching a live wire. Now give me the letter, Kessler said. His hand was out again, waiting. I handed him the letter. He took it like it might burn his fingers. Then he pulled out a silver lighter and set the corner on fire. The flame caught quickly, spreading across the paper like a confession burning its way out. Kessler held it until the heat reached his hand, then dropped it. The ashes scattered in the fog, mixing with the mist, disappearing into the bay. There, he said. Now it's gone. Now nobody knows, including you. I know, I said. I was standing right here. I heard every word. Kessler shook his head. Hearsay. Your word against a dead man's letter. The letter's gone. Corrigan's lawyers will eat you alive. You have no evidence, no proof, just a story. and stories are cheap. He picked up his briefcase and turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing, Orton. Holloway knows you have the letter. He'll come looking for it. I'd watch your back. He disappeared into the fog. I stood there alone, watching the ashes drift toward the water. The letter was gone. The evidence was ash, but the knowledge was still in my head. Senator Corrigan, the man who'd been running for office since before I was born, the man with the clean image and the dirty hands. I needed proof, something Kessler hadn't destroyed, something that could survive fire and fog and men like Holloway. I drove back to my office thinking about David Chun. He was still out there somewhere, wearing a new name, living a new life. He knew the truth about Corrigan. He'd been carrying it for 12 years. Maybe he still had evidence. The kind that doesn't burn. The kind that fits in a safe deposit box and waits for the right moment. I needed to find Chun, but Chun didn't want to be found. That was the whole point of Kessler's business. I called Lillian Cross in Berkeley. She answered on the third ring. I need to find David Chun, I said. She was quiet for a moment. That's not possible. Victor's very good at what he does. Chun is gone. I raced. You'll never find him. I told her I didn't need to find him. I needed to find someone who knew how to contact him. Someone in Kessler's network. Someone who might have kept records. Kessler had clients. Clients had files. Lillian sighed. There's a woman. Her name is Margaret Cross. No relation. She worked for Victor as his secretary for 15 years. She knows everything. Where the bodies are buried. Where the files are kept. Where the clients go. She left Victor 6 months ago. Had a falling out. He threatened her. She's been hiding ever since. I asked where I could find her. She's in the city. Uses a fake name. Vivian Marsh. Lives in North Beach. Vivian Marsh, North Beach. I wrote down the address. Thanked Lillian and hung up. The clock said 1 in the morning. Too late for polite visits. But I wasn't feeling polite. I drove to North Beach, found the apartment building, and buzzed unit for B. No answer. I buzzed again. Still nothing. Then I noticed the front door was unlocked. Careless or inviting. I pushed it open and climbed the stairs. The door to 4B was ajar. I pushed it open with my elbow, my hand on my revolver. The apartment was dark. I found a light switch. The room was a mess. Drawers pulled out. Furniture overturned. Someone had been here before me. Searching. I called out. Vivian? Margaret? Anyone home? Silence. Then a sound from the bedroom, a soft whimper. I moved toward it, my gun up. The bedroom was worse. And on the floor behind the bed, a woman. She was alive. Barely. Her face was bruised. Her lip was split. Her hands were tied behind her back with a telephone cord. I knelt beside her, checked her pulse. Weak, but there. Margaret Cross, I asked. She nodded, winced. Holloway, she whispered. He came looking for the files. I told him I didn't have them. He didn't believe me. I cut the cord with my pocket knife. She rubbed her wrists, crying silently. I asked her where the files were. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. Safe deposit box. Bank of America. Downtown. Box 742. The numbers again. They were following me like a curse. What's in them? I asked. Everything, she said. Every client, every identity, every payment. Victor kept copies, in case someone betrayed him. He never trusted anyone, not even himself. The box is in my name. The key is in my coat pocket. I found the key in her coat pocket. Small, brass, with the number 742 stamped on the head. The same number that kept appearing like a bad penny. I helped Margaret to her feet. Can you walk? She nodded, unsteady. I'll take you somewhere safe. Then I'm going to that bank. She grabbed my arm. Be careful. Holloway knows about the box. He just doesn't know where. When he finds out, he'll come for you. For both of us. I told her I was counting on it. I drove Marguerite to Dorothy Brennan's hotel. 2 women with something in common. Both afraid. Both targeted by the same man. I told Dorothy to keep Margaret safe. Don't open the door for anyone. Don't answer the phone. Don't trust room service. She nodded, pale but determined. I left them there, 2 refugees from a war they didn't start. The rain had stopped. The city was holding its breath. I drove to the bank. The Bank of America downtown was closed. But banks have night depositories and night managers. I found the after-hours entrance, buzzed, showed my license, and told the manager I needed access to a safe deposit box. He was reluctant. I mentioned Senator Corrigan's name. He stopped being reluctant. Funny how power works. He led me to the vault, watched as I inserted the key, turned the lock. The box slid out. Heavy, full of secrets. Inside were files, dozens of them, each labeled with a name: David Chun, Peter Brennan, Thomas Whitmore. And at the bottom, a folder marked Corrigan, original. I opened it. Bank statements, transfer records, photographs, and a signed confession from David Chun, dated 12 years ago, explaining how Corrigan had framed him. It was all there. Every piece of evidence needed to destroy a senator's career. Maybe his life. I closed the box, put everything back except the Corrigan file. That one went into my coat. I thanked the manager and left. The fog was thicker now. The city was dreaming its gray dream. I walked to my car. That's when I saw him, standing by the driver's door. Tall, dark coat, cold eyes, Holloway. He was holding a gun, not pointing it, just holding it, like a promise. "You've been busy, Orton," he said. "I'll take that file now." I looked at the gun in Holloway's hand, then at his face. Same empty eyes, same professional calm. "You're making a habit of showing up where you're not wanted," I said. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "And you're making a habit of taking things that don't belong to you. The file, Orton." Now I didn't move. The fog swirled between us like a referee. "You know what's in this file?" I asked. "Evidence that puts your boss in prison." "Corrigan isn't my boss," Holloway said. "He's a client. And clients pay well, but loyalty has limits. Give me the file, and I'll let you walk. Keep it, and I'll take it from your body. Either way, the file ends up with me. The only question is whether you're breathing when I leave." I believed him. Holloway wasn't the type to make empty threats. He was the type to make good ones. I reached into my coat, slowly. He tensed. I pulled out the file, held it up. "This is what you want." He nodded. I tossed it to him. He caught it with his free hand, never taking his eyes off me. "Smart man," he said. He opened the file, glanced at the contents. His expression shifted. Confusion, then anger. "This is empty," he said. "There's nothing here but blank paper." I shrugged. "You didn't think I'd bring the real file to a meeting with you, did you?" "I'm not that stupid." Holloway's face went cold, colder than the fog. Colder than the bay. "Where is it?" I told him it was in a safe place. A place he'd never find. A place with a name he didn't know. He raised the gun, pointed it at my chest. "Last chance, Orton." I didn't flinch. "You shoot me, you never find it. The file goes to every newspaper in the city. Corrigan goes to prison. You go to prison, everyone loses. Put the gun down. Walk away. While you still can." He stared at me for a long moment. The gun didn't waver. Then something behind his eyes shifted. Calculation. Odds. He lowered the weapon. "This isn't over," he said. "I'll find the file. And when I do, I'll find you." He turned and disappeared into the fog. I stood there, heart pounding, pretending to be calm. The empty file was a bluff. The real one was in my other pocket. He hadn't searched me. Lucky. Or stupid. Probably both. I drove back to my office with the real file pressed against my chest. The fog followed me like a guilty conscience. Holloway would be back. He wasn't the type to give up. Neither was I. That made us evenly matched. The difference was I had the truth on my side. He had a gun and a client with deep pockets. In this city, deep pockets usually won, but not always. Sometimes the truth slipped through the cracks. That's where I lived. I sat at my desk and read the Corrigan file, every page. Every bank transfer, every photograph. David Chun hadn't just been framed. He'd been sacrificed. Corrigan had set him up, stolen the money, and let Chun take the fall. When Chun ran, Corrigan hired Kessler to find him, not to bring him back. To silence him. Kessler had made a different deal. He'd let Chun disappear in exchange for a cut of the identity business, a partnership of mutual convenience. The file also contained a list of names, journalists, judges, police officers, all on Corrigan's payroll, all willing to look the other way for the right price. The city's corruption wasn't a secret, it was a system, and Corrigan was the system's banker. I closed the file and poured myself a drink. The whiskey burned going down. The truth burned more. I had enough evidence to destroy a senator. I also had enough to get myself killed. I called Frances Hale, the reporter from the elevator case. She answered on the second ring. "It's 3 a.m, Orton." I told her I had something bigger than the elevator case, something that would make the front page for a month. She was quiet for a moment. "I'm listening." I told her about Corrigan, about Chun, about Kessler and Holloway, and the identity business. When I finished, she said, "Where's the evidence?" "In my hand," I said. "I need to see it," Frances said, "but not over the phone. Meet me at my office. 1 hour. Come alone." The line went dead. I looked at the clock. 3:15. I had 45 minutes to decide if I trusted Frances's Hale. I did, as much as I trusted anyone, which wasn't much, but it was enough. I put the file in my coat, checked my revolver, and walked out into the fog. The city was asleep, or pretending to be. Francise's office was in the Chronicle building. The presses were running. The sound of printing presses is the sound of democracy working, or pretending to. I took the stairs to the 3rd floor. Her door was open. Light spilled into the hallway. I stepped inside. Frances was at her desk, coffee cup in hand, expression tired but focused. "Close the door," she said. I did. Then I laid the Corrigan file on her desk. She opened it, started reading. She read for 20 minutes. I watched her face go through the stages of professional horror, curiosity, disbelief, anger, then something I hadn't seen before, fear, real fear. "This is dynamite," she said. "If we publish this, Corrigan will come after us, after me, after you. He has resources, he has friends, he has a private army of men like Holloway." I told her I knew. "Are you willing to take that risk?" She looked at me. "The question is, are you?" I told her I'd been taking risks since I opened my office. Some paid off, most didn't, but this one wasn't about me. It was about David Chun running for 12 years. Peter Brennan sitting in jail for a crime he didn't understand. Margaret Cross beaten by a man who wanted her silence. And the senator smiling for cameras while his hands were dirty. "Publish it," I said. Frances nodded. "Then I need to make copies. Multiple copies. Different locations. Insurance." She worked fast, photocopied every page. Made 3 sets. One for her desk, one for a friend in Los Angeles. One for a safe deposit box in her name. "Standard procedure," she said. "When you're dealing with powerful men, you spread the risk. If they come after one copy, the others survive." I watched her work, thinking about Kessler's letter turning to ash. Some evidence needed to burn. Some needed to be preserved. The trick was knowing which was which. Frances finished around 5 a.m. The sun wasn't up yet. The fog was starting to lift. "I'll write the story today," she said. "We'll run it tomorrow morning. Front page. Above the fold." I asked if she was scared. She laughed, terrified. "But that's the job. Being scared and doing it anyway. That's what separates reporters from stenographers." I stood up to leave. She grabbed my arm. "Be careful, Orton. Holloway knows you have the evidence. He'll come for you." I told her I was counting on it, then I left. The city was waking up. Delivery trucks, early commuters, the smell of coffee and diesel. I drove to Dorothy Brennan's hotel, knocked on her door. She opened it, eyes red, hair a mess. "Did you find something?" she asked. I told her I'd found everything. Her brother would be out of jail soon. The real criminal would face justice. She started crying, happy tears. I didn't know what to do with those, so I just stood there. The story ran on Sunday, front page. Above the fold, Senator Corrigan held a press conference, denied everything, called it a witch hunt. Then the evidence started leaking. Bank records, photographs, The confession from David Chun. By Tuesday, 3 more journalists had picked up the story. By Friday, the senator's approval rating had dropped 20 points. By the following Monday, he announced he wouldn't seek re-election. Translation: he was running scared. Peter Brennan was released from jail. The charges were dropped. The real Thomas Whitmore, David Chun, was still missing. Probably still running. Some people never stop. I didn't blame him. After 12 years of being hunted, trust becomes a luxury you can't afford. He'd send a letter to his lawyer, though, confessing everything, naming Corrigan. The letter arrived the day after the story broke. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. Victor Kessler disappeared. His office was empty. His bank accounts were closed. His clients scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Margaret Cross went into hiding. New name, new city, new life. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who'd helped people become someone else had to become someone else herself. Holloway vanished too. No forwarding address, no trace. Just a ghost in a dark coat. I checked my rearview mirror for weeks. He wasn't there. Probably. Dorothy Brennan sent me a check. Twice my fee. I cashed it. Money doesn't fix everything, but it fixes the things that matter, like rent, like whiskey, like the electric bill that kept my office lights on. She also sent a letter. Thanked me for saving her brother. Asked if I wanted to come to dinner sometime. I declined, not because I was busy, because happy endings aren't my specialty. I'm better at the messy parts. The case taught me something. Names are just labels. You can change them, borrow them, steal them. But who you are underneath, that's harder to fake. Pierre Brennan tried to become someone else and ended up in jail. David Chun tried to become someone else and ended up running forever. Senator Corrigan tried to become someone he wasn't and ended up losing everything. The only people who came out clean were the ones who didn't pretend. I still have the file, the original. The one Holloway almost killed me for. I keep it in my bottom drawer next to the bourbon and the photograph of a woman I couldn't save. Not because I need it. Because it reminds me that the truth doesn't always win, but sometimes it ties. And in this city, a tie is as good as a victory. The rain still falls, the fog still rolls in, and men still walk into my office with problems they can't solve. My name is Jack Orton. I've been a private detective in this city for 9 years. I've learned that identity is a fragile thing. You can lose it, trade it, have it stolen. But you can also find it. Sometimes in a file, sometimes in a letter, sometimes in the eyes of a sister who refuses to give up on her brother. The borrowed name case is closed, but there'll be others. There are always others. That's the job. That's the curse. That's the story.